You're listening to Market Champions, a podcast on navigating the financial markets. Here's your host, Srivatsan Prakash.
Hey guys, I wanted to take this opportunity to remind you all to like and subscribe. It really helps me to keep getting the best guests onto the podcast. So I really appreciate it if you did. And now onto the video.
I'm ready to start, Sri. Whenever you want.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Market Champions. Today we've got the legendary short seller, Marc Cohodes. Now, unless you've been living under a rock, you would probably know who Marc is. But for the very few people who don't know who Marc is, Marc was formerly the manager of Copper River Management, and he is shorted some of the biggest frauds in history. And recently, he was vindicated on his MiMedx fraud when we saw the CEO, Parker Petit, get sentenced to 1 year in jail with $1 million fine. So thank you so much for being on the podcast, Marc. It's awesome to have you.
Sri, it's my pleasure. I give you a lot of credit. You're a persistent fellow, and I admire that. I tried to wiggle off the hook. I tried to blow you off, but you don't give up. So that's a tremendous quality. Plus, you're a smart-ass dude.
Thank you so much.
Especially at age 17. I mean, that's pretty good and pretty impressive, folks, that this guy's willing to bust his ass, go to school, and have a sorry ass like myself on his podcast. So
thank you.
Let's get right to it.
Awesome. So, Marc, I wanted to start off by talking a little bit about your investment and your research process. So I just wanted to ask you first. So how do you start, sourcing ideas and, what goes on in the middle before you actually arrive at a conclusion?
Okay. So I think shorting stocks right now is beyond textbook impossible, dangerous. Can make you broke. You have everyone absolutely against you. So we'll go through that process both long and short. So I view myself not in a pervy sense as a stalker. So I probably know in my head, give or take, maybe 1,000, 1,500 names.
Wow.
Across. Well, I mean, I'm an old man. You're 17, I'm almost 61. So I've seen cycle in, cycle out. I'm very familiar with resources, financial companies, retailers, servicers, suppliers, early cycle, late cycle, mid cycle. So if I get like a theme in my head, I say, is this guy going to work now, or is this guy going to sort of flop? And something of pattern recognition and having a memory is very important in this business. I'm not as smart as you. My grades were never good. I sucked at school, couldn't pay attention. I always say, don't let your schooling get in the way of your education. But about a year ago, in the pandemic and when all hell was breaking loose, I've been long or short the RV stocks probably 14 times in my life, up or down. And pessimism was so high in the space, I figured I'd look at the most leveraged player, which was Camping World, which was a $5 stock down from 50. And I admire the guy who runs it, Marcus Lemonis, and everyone hated it. The guy was going to do about $4 billion in revenue. It was a 400 million cap, and it had about $1 billion of debt. So I figured if they weren't going to go out of business, the stock would absolutely go batshit crazy. So I looked at the numbers and I said, he has ample liquidity. He may be tight on covenants, but everyone in the depths of the pandemic or the start of it was tight on covenants. Not everyone was going to go broke. So I said to myself, if he can get through, if he doesn't have a liquidity problem, and the world didn't end, this year, 2021, for his EBITDA was 90 million. and he just raised guidance to 640 million. So his estimate is up 7 times from where it was a year ago.
Right.
And the stock's gone from 5 to roughly 40. So in extreme times, you start going to tricks you've learned in the past of who can win, who can lose. And at an inflection point, you try to go with either the most leveraged if you think things are going to get better, or unleveraged if you think things are going to get worse. So that's it for a long. That's it for, a long, a simple. Shorts are much harder. I mean, shorts you have to stock in a normal time. And I always say, and this is very important, you bet the jockey, not the horse. And you're from a country where there's an awful lot of bad jockeys. There's very few good ones. I mean, the best operator you guys have in your country is the guy who runs Constellation Software. I mean, that guy is just a badass. I mean, he's a serious, serious player. So because the world's so dangerous, finding short ideas and stocking shorts is more time consuming and inflicts more damage on the brain. And let's use Canada for an example to highlight one of my theories. You bet the jockey, not the horse. And it's not hard to find bad jockeys in Canada because most of them are crooked, corrupt, and have been involved in problems before. I mean, the best operator who I would never short in Canada is that guy who runs Constellation Software. I mean, that guy is just badass and he's world class. And I would never, ever, ever think of shorting him. But everyone else in Canada, by and large, is fair game. And what happens is, let's just say with Concordia, and that rat bastard sued me. So let's use Marc Thompson as a perfect example in his low-life lawyers. He was a poor man's Valiant. And when Valiant was going up, and Valiant, for those not paying attention, was this huge roll-up, an aggressive pricer of basically generic drugs and other compounds run by a guy named Mike Pearson. And Valiant was a huge stock. And when Valiant was going up, everyone wanted to be like Valiant. And Concordia was over leveraged. They had crappy drugs. They were raising and gouging prices far more than anyone. And it was something that was on my radar because Thompson was Larry Melnick's, or Eugene Melnick's, right-hand man at BioVale. And Melnick ran amok of the law up there, which again isn't hard to do. So I've always had my eyes on Marc Thompson. So when Valiant hit its roadblock, I knew Concordia was going to get sick and very sick. So maybe I watched Concordia for a couple of years before I got involved. And when I got involved in a big way, which leads me to another saying where I say, never climb a tree to fight the jaguar out of the tree. And Concordia, when things were good and things were boiling, was a jaguar in the tree. And anyone who tried to short it, you climb the tree with the jaguar, there's no good outcomes. The jaguar can cut you. You can bleed to death. The jaguar can bite you. You bleed to death, or the jaguar can knock you out of the tree and you fall to your death. So there's nothing good about wrestling a jaguar out of the tree. So I just waited till my good buddy Roland Kuiper shot the jaguar out of the tree. And the second it hit the ground, I took the knife and carved it up, Canadian style, with my hands. So that's an example of stalking a very bad player in a suspect industry that uses a lot of leverage. So when you short a stock, or when I used to try to short stocks, I always also would go with the rule of thumb: if this company disappeared tomorrow, would anyone miss it? I think for all the people listening to this, old and young, girl or boy, that's a good test to run for any, investment idea, really long or short, but mainly short. if this company went out of business tomorrow, would you miss them? Would people miss Netflix? Absolutely. Would they miss Shopify? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Would they miss Chipotle? Absolutely. Would they miss Tim Hortons? If for you Canadians,
Absolutely, yeah.
they would just die. I mean, would they miss happy hour? Absolutely. Would they miss all the marijuana companies? Some of them, because I think the investment guys operate high all the time.
Right.
But would you miss Concordia? No. Would you miss Home Capital Group? No. Would you miss BNN? Hell no. A bunch of chuckleheads. So that's a good acid test to use, along with checking out the track record of managements, overlaid with what you know in various industries and who are the good and bad actors. So that's sort of the rule of thumb long. That's sort of the rule of thumb shorten. Information available upon request.
And what are sort of the common patterns you see among all frauds? There's probably some kind of thread or some kind of common principles that you see every single fraud executing upon. So could you sort of tell us what are the patterns that you see in basically all the frauds that you research?
All the frauds I've researched. You're 17. I'm 61. There's probably hundreds of them. But the first one, that's I have my wig indicator. That any CEO who wears a wig, I think I'm 18 or 19 out of CEOs who wear wigs. So if I come across a CEO who wears a wig, and I think the last guy was that Hudson fellow in Canada who wears a wig, that's a gimme. But by and large, most frauds attack critics mercilessly, and they try to sue you, they try to threaten you, they try to bully you, they try to do all sorts of things to get you off your case. So whenever someone tries to sue a skeptic, sue a journalist, things like that, that's always a tell with a fraud. Then something that a lot of them do is the stories start to get very big and they get very crazy. Learn out in Houseby, which was the largest fraud in Europe in its time, up until 2000. That was a speech recognition company. And they were laundering money for the Russian mob. When that got completely out of hand for them, their largest market was South Korea. Now, South Korea isn't a small country, and there's plenty of action in South Korea, but it pales to the United States. The action of business tends to be in places that are very bizarre, that get very difficult to verify. Wirecard, a German payment processor, which was a fraud, which I didn't do the primary research on, threatened skeptics, changed stories, and their big action was in Southeast Asia, centered in Dubai, which got sort of nuts, because what would the German payment processor be doing with all these various fronts and places like Dubai? So these things get nuts. I mean, MediaVision was he was selling soundboards, but he said he's getting into the software gaming business, which just makes no sense. It has nothing to do with its core competency.
Right.
And frauds make the messenger the story to get people to stay away from the message. They try to make me the villain, if you will, rather than focus on the issues. And a lot of times people, especially in Canada, love nothing more than a good old-fashioned short squeeze. So it becomes about the drama. It becomes about everything except the business.
Right.
And it's very hard if you're short a stock to try to keep people focused on message, because by and large they want to kill you, put you out of business, see you get squeezed so they can make money and leave the crime scene. So those seem to be the common threads. I mean, they write regulators to get you investigated constantly. They spread rumors, all of them at some point in their life cycle say they're a takeover or mulling to get bought. I mean, Concordia did that. They say they've hired, Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe, off of Bay Street, one of those Bay Street clowns, to advise it of its strategic alternatives. And then all the jokers, in Canada say, like Andrew McCreath with Concordia, he said it was worth 50 to 60. I mean, that punk ass clown, he goes on TV. He said it's the victim of a short and distort campaign. It's worth 50 to 60. Andrew, it's worth fucking zero, you dumbass. And that guy is still on TV. No one has a memory, but I have a memory. So it's attack the skeptics, threaten the skeptics with lawsuits, change the message, shoot the messenger, and usually the coup de grace is some form of takeover. That we're going to sell out, which brings everyone into the circus.
And the point of the takeover is probably just to squeeze the shorts.
100%. And the OSC spends 80% of their time at happy hour at the Tim Hortons. They do no work. They're in cahoots with all the lawyers and the companies. They do nothing. And if they do anything, they'd investigate the shorts. So freedom of speech exists across the world, but especially in Canada, as long as it's bullish. You can't say anything negative about people. You sure can't say anything negative about companies. But it is what it is. Those are the rules of the road. And it's a very, very, very dangerous, manipulated game right now. So I advise everyone, unless you're completely brain damaged, to stay out of it, at least until this blows over. I mean, stay way out of it.
As you mentioned, one of the biggest risks, especially when you're short a company in Canada, is that the CEO is going to announce some sort of takeover. So I wanted to ask you, how exactly do you go about managing risk? How do you go about sizing positions and so on? How do you construct these positions, especially, the stock could, it could spike 100, 200%, and, you'd be done for. So how do you size these positions?
Well, first of all, I don't run a fund anymore. I manage my own money. So being short stocks is known as peak stupidity. So when you ask a question, how do you manage the risk? If anyone gives you an answer which sounds at all coherent, they're lying. Because the bottom line is you can't manage the risk. It's impossible to manage. Now, people say you can buy call options or this, that, and the other, but the calls are so expensive, it makes no sense. Then you say, how do you size the position? Well, in the past, I would take really big positions, probably irresponsibly so, but it's my own money, so I only have myself to blame. I don't blame others. If I get involved in a name, if I make, it's because of me. If I lose, it's because of me. So I don't blame others. So since I'm mentally not right, my positions tend to be bigger than they should be, but I take very few positions at any one time on the short side. And you have to figure out where you are in the story and what risk and loss tolerance you're willing to take. Now, I got involved in Concordia somewhere between 80 and 100. Actually, between 80 and 110. Because I thought I saw the Valiant stuff, and I said it between 80 and 110, that if it went to 150, I could live with it. I wouldn't like it, but I could live with it. But anything over 150, I'd say, I'm too early, I'm wrong, my timing's bad, this isn't for me, exit stage left. And that's me. I said exit stage left. So I exit stage left, but it started to go down. But I'm of the mind that when things start to go your way and the news goes your way and you see the thing breaking, you step on their throat.
Right.
So I would do more and more and more on the way down. So I was actually short more Concordia at 12 than I was at 100 dollar-wise because I thought he was doomed once they threw Thompson's sorry ass out. Now, I also pressed it up at 50. I also pressed it up at 40. I also pressed it up at 20. So after I pressed it up on 20, they came with we're hiring blank, blank, blank to advise us of our strategic alternatives. And about 6 hours later, the thing was 33. And I had a Canadian turkey leg wedged sideways in my throat. And I could barely talk. I said, what the fuck did I just do? I just killed myself. So I think, God, I'm pretty smart on the way down, but I guess I pressed it up one too many times, So at 33, it was a big position because I kept jacking it up and I wasn't comfortable. But at 33, I'd say I can sit with this thing till 40. If it goes to 40, I clearly made a mistake pressing it up at 20 and 25. I'll cover my 20 and 25 stock and wait for the thing to blow over. But it sort of petered out at 33. Then they threw Thompson's sorry ass out at 15. Now he's probably mowing the lawn for some two-bit clown in Yellowknife or something like that. And it eventually went to 0. That's where it went. So there's no hard and fast rule. It's all what you mentally can put up with. Mentally now I can't put up with much, which is why I don't want to do it. And people can see by the GameStop thing that things are crazy and things are broken. And my other rule of thumb is if you can't explain your position to a 10th grader or less in a paragraph or less, you probably shouldn't be in it.
Right.
So when you do things like that, if people ask you the story and you can't explain it simply, you probably shouldn't be in it because it starts getting too convoluted, too drawn out, too many ways they can just completely and utterly rat fuck you. And it's no good to get rat fucked. This isn't a PG show, right? This is rated R. Is that okay?
I mean, no, feel free to swear.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with that.
I mean, Canadians swear all the time. Don't they teach you how to swear like in the 4th grade? Huh? I mean, they teach Canadians how to swear in the 4th grade. You drink in the 6th grade, right? and you vote in the 8th grade. That's what I'm told. That's what my man Roland Kuiper told me. That's how they teach you in Canada. So does that help you out at all with the risk stuff?
Right. And do you use, say, technical analysis or any other methods to sort of time your entries, or do you just purely go on fundamental conviction?
I go on fundamentals and I go on my deluded mind when I think it's time to go. I mean, some people swear by charts. I think charts are completely worthless. I mean, they tell you where you've been, right? I mean, it's like looking at a map. I don't need to know where the fuck I've been. I just need to know where I'm going. And the charts don't predict the future. They just show you where you've been in the past. So, I mean, since I trust so few people, I don't trust, I trust myself more than anything. And I think if it's time to go, my intuition and my judgment has tended to be good over time. So I just go with what I think. But, a chart just tells you where you've been. People like a story, you look at a chart and the chart stock's at a high, you just say, where were you a year ago? Well, a year ago, I was sucking pond water right now on Camping World at $5. I mean, the chart looked like absolute shit and it looked like it was going to go broke. But everyone knew it. But that was the current prevailing theme. So, it's where you think it's going to go, not where you've been. And the charts can't tell you where you're going. So,
got it. I wanted to ask you, are you looking at any long ideas in this kind of market? A lot of people say, it's getting very bubbly. It's something, you've got to be cautious on. So are you seeing any kind of opportunity in this sort of market?
Yeah. I mean, there's opportunities to go long. I mean, there's opportunities to go long all the time. Now, when you say things are bubbly, are we in a bubble? Sure, we're in some form of bubble. but bubbles can get very big
Right.
before they pop. I mean, fat guys can get very fat before they drop dead. Just because you weigh 300 pounds doesn't mean you don't get to 500 pounds, and you can get to 800 pounds and you still may not have a heart attack. The odds are you do. I mean, the odds are the more weight you gain that you're obese, you'll drop dead, but you just don't know. So what's really important for everyone out there is when you show up at Maple Leaf Gardens, you're there to play hockey. Don't bring your soccer gear. Know what game is being played. And you can elect to play the game, or you can elect to watch the game, but don't fight the game, because the game wins. So in a speculative environment where there's a lot of money around, where there's a huge retail presence, which there is, and that's not going to go away anytime soon, with a lot of stimulus going into the hands of people in this country, we're in an anything goes environment. We're in a story market.
Right.
So if you hear a good story and you can quantify the risks and it makes sense to you, you can explain it to a 10th grader, you know what game you're playing, you can invest accordingly. You know where metrics are. I mean, I still love Camping World here. I mean, a year ago, the guy was supposed to do 90 in EBITDA. Now he's going to do 640. I think 640 is low. I think he's going to do more than that. Stock's now 38, up from 5. Who cares, right? The stock's still down from 50 a couple of years ago because people don't believe the numbers. And if they do believe 640 and people were to believe next year's an up year, the stock can go to 70, which is a double from here. So I like Camping World. I just bought some more the other day. And something that intrigues me a lot is I'm long something in the States called App Harvest, which is APPH. And I'm long the warrants because the warrants are at a discount to the common. And it's a SPAC. And it's high-tech farming. It's in a high-tech greenhouse that uses 90% less water, where yields are 30 times greater than the fields. And there's a lot of ways to win here. It's an ESG play. It's an employment of coal miners in Kentucky. The products get to the shelves within 16 hours of being harvested. And the growth potentially here is huge. It's huge. It's a story stock. It's very speculative. But if it works, it can be gargantuanly big. And I remember early on in Canada, everyone, when pot stocks first came out, everyone was very skeptical of the pot stocks. And they said, what do you think? Aren't they great shorts? I said, I wouldn't touch them because the opportunity here is open-ended. And the opportunity at App Harvest is open-ended. And there's a lot of skeptics because they say it's high and it costs or this or costs or that. But I have a really good friend, Alan Hickok, who makes a lot of money being like a food consultant to real companies, real big companies. And he makes a point that your listeners should always remember. It's not developing something new. It's not new that does it. And it's not, revolutionary that does it. It's just better. It's something that's better. So in the States, when I was your age, there used to be Budweiser, Miller, and Schlitz.
Right.
In Canada, there used to be Molson and Labatt's. That was it. But along came craft beer. And craft beer has now kicked the majors' asses. Why? Because it's better. It's a huge market where there's huge runway, where there's huge share to take, and craft beer is better. When I was your age, there were 3 flavors of ice cream: strawberry, vanilla, and chocolate. Then along came Ben & Jerry's. Then along came Haagen-Dazs. And now the plain ice cream is no longer. Why? Because super premium is better. The flavors are better. And instead of charging $1.59 a pint, they can charge $7 a pint, or in Canadian dollars, $18 a pint, because that loony's not worth a shit. Charge a lot of money for ice cream. And people would say, well, it's just ice cream. Well, people don't give a rat's ass what they pay for it if it's better. And the App Harvest tomato is better. It's not waxy. It's not chemically induced. Hasn't been sitting in a truck for a month. So I think high-tech farming is going to be to investors in this year and next year, maybe the year after, what EV and hydrogen was to investors a few years ago. So I kind of like that a bit. So that's what I like. I mean, I like Overstock, but I've liked Overstock for a while. I'd buy more of that one. So that's sort of what I'm thinking. I mean, I'm not heavily invested because the market's like a pig on LSD. You inject the pig, you don't know if it's running north or south or east or west, but you know the fucking thing is going to run and run a lot, and you just don't want to get bit by them, and you don't want to get run over by them. I mean, the other day, everyone's worried about interest rates. Everyone thinks the market's going to crash, and they're ready to lynch Cathie Wood. And 2 days later, the market's up 3,000. Cathie Wood's going to win the Nobel Prize, and we're up and away, making new highs. So I don't give a rat's ass on the day-to-day. I'm not a macro guy. I was never good in school like you are. And I just do this, but I try to focus on what I know. I try to focus on what I think's right and what I think's going to happen. And yeah, it's a bubble, but there's always something going on that can get you excited. There's always something going on that can terrify you. You know, you don't want to live terrified. You don't want to live too excited. You want to live sort of in the here and now.
Right. Are there anything that investors as a whole are sort of missing out today? So, for example, in the 1990s, a lot of investors, they just jumped on the Enron bandwagon. So, similarly, do you see any kind of thing that investors as a whole are missing out in the market?
Missing out risk-wise or missing out reward-wise?
Well, both.
Well, missing out risk-wise, I spoke to a college yesterday over the Zoom, and I said, don't be afraid to think for yourself. Groupthink is bad. Dare to be different. Dare to think clearly and for yourself, because I think these institutions and a lot of these funds all try to operate as a pack. If you see something you like, if you can explain it, don't have fear that it's not popular. Mm-hmm. Don't go into something because everyone's going in it, and don't shun it because everyone hates it. Don't be afraid to be different. At the same time, this Robinhood / Reddit craze, or the Wall Street bets, or this, that, or the other, be skeptical of the messages that are told to you, and again, unless it makes sense. Now, I think the Joe Sixpack and retail and Reddit movement is here to stay, and it's underestimated by professionals and the Cartoon Network, AKCNBC, and the bunch of clowns at BNN. It's underestimated by all those people. But the one thing that's important is, just because you see something go up, don't buy it because it's going up, and don't sell it because it's going down. That's both risk and that's both reward. Think of it, understand it, say this is for me, and have the courage of your convictions, because a lot of times these guys who get on TV and pushing stocks and all this stuff, they have an agenda. They want you to buy what you own. And I would just rather think about it and say, that's a decent idea, but how about this? Or think what happens next. Or everyone's all geared up on these so-called reopening plays.
Right.
Well, in Asia, after things reopened, people kept shopping online. It didn't really change. Once people get used to it, you still do it. So it's not a given everyone's going back to bricks and mortar. It's not a given that's going to happen. It's not a given everyone's getting on a plane and going wherever the hell they're going. And it's not a given people are going to stop using Zoom. Actually, you know, where I think people are making a mistake is if I was running a business and the world reopened up, everyone did mighty fine on Zoom conducting business. I don't have to pay to get you on a plane and pay to have you take someone out or have to pay hotel rooms or this, that, and the other because you did a damn good job on Zoom.
Right.
Now, maybe once a year, I'll send you out to a territory or this, that, and the other. But I don't think things necessarily are going to come back to the way they were. And, you know, people have the cruise ships and the airlines back at highs. And it's like, fuck it. You could offer me a free cruise for life. I wouldn't get on one. It wouldn't matter. Now, there'll be some diehards who go back. Same thing with amusement parks. Same thing with hotels. Because once people change and people's pattern changes for a period of time, yeah, they'll go back and do things, but people will enjoy their freedom, but things may not be as buoyant as the stocks would indicate. So where I'm segueing to that is just because people tell you reopening plays, that's not a given.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a year ago, I bought the Atlanta Braves stock when I bought Camping World, and the stock was 13. And I said I was buying the Brave stocks, and people said, "Why would you buy baseball? The season's going to be canceled." I said, "Fine. Everyone knows this year is shot, right? But the franchise is still worth plenty of money. And if there's a season the next year, this thing will go back." And the thing made a new high yesterday. I mean, I sold it 4 months ago. It was up 80%, and I got out. But all these things aren't a given, and the average person who's watching this has more smarts than the professional money managers. So that's both risk and reward. Don't do what people tell you to do. Don't listen to me. Think for yourself. If my idea makes sense to you or your ideas make sense to people, by all means, go for it. But one, sure don't short stocks. Two, don't do what anyone says. Think it through to yourself and be able to live with it. Be able to live with if it goes down, you'll like it and you'll buy more. And if you're wrong, don't change your story to justify you being right. Just say, I made a mistake. I'm getting out. It is what it is.
Right.
And there's always something else to do. So don't throw good money after bad if you think you've made a mistake.
Got it. So for the next question, I wanted to focus on a specific stock. So in a recent interview with Edwin Dorsey, the guy who runs the Bear Cave newsletter, which is, it's a short focus and it's an awesome newsletter. So you mentioned the stock Penumbra. So I wanted to ask you, what's the latest on Penumbra? And before you, answer that, could you sort of give a brief thesis on Penumbra for what you see in case someone is not aware?
Okay. That's my dogs. They think a Canadian's at the door. Don't worry, dogs. We're okay. I'm on the phone with a Canadian. We're clear. They're not trying to kill me today. Do you know Edwin?
Sorry?
Do you know Edwin Dorsey?
I've had him on the podcast before, yeah.
Do you subscribe to his newsletter?
Yep.
You do?
Yeah.
Do you pay?
No.
You don't pay?
No. I don't have sort of the capability to take, massive short positions right now, so.
Okay. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Hold on one second. Hold on.
Okay, yeah, sure.
This is live, folks. Hold on. Aurora. Hey. Sure. Come on out. Gotta be quiet. Go. Okay, I've returned. To show you that we improvise.
Wait, is that Edwin?
We're improvising, folks. The rat bastard's not picking me up. So for you, I'm going to buy you. How's it going, Edwin?
I'm doing great. How are you, Marc?
I'm doing good. I'm doing a live podcast with Sri. You know Sri?
I've had him on the podcast before.
Sri's had you on his podcast before. He's Canadian. He's 17.
Oh, that guy. That's awesome.
Yeah, so you're live on the podcast, so be careful what you say.
Oh, wonderful. Hi, Sri. I'm very glad to be on live. This is exciting.
So he was talking about his newsletter, about your newsletter, and he says it's great. And I said, do you subscribe? He says he doesn't have the money to subscribe. So Edwin, I want you to sign up Sri, and I'm going to pay for him for a year.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Okay. So you have his email. So you put him on your list for your newsletter, and I'm going to pay for him.
Wow.
Absolutely. We'll do that today.
Okay.
I'm excited to do that. Absolutely.
Okay, but I definitely want to pay. And for all you people out there, it's the Bear Cave, right, Edwin? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah, just Google the Bear Cave newsletter. It'll come straight up. And you're good to go. The Bear Cave newsletter.
The Bear Cave newsletter, ladies and gentlemen. I pay for this, and I'm buying Sri a year's subscription, and I support Edwin. And Edwin, how old are you now?
22.
He's 22. Sri is 17. And you got to support these young people, ladies and gentlemen. So we're good to go, Edwin. Sign them up and send me the bill.
Will do,
Wow.
Marc.
Okay.
All the best.
Yeah, bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
So that shows, folks, that none of this is act, rehearse, or anything. This is live ammo.
Wow.
So Penumbra. So Penumbra is a medical device company that my good friend Gabriel Grego wrote up. And he wrote up something about its catheter, something called the Jet 7 Plus, was killing people. And he documented experts' opinions, tests. He showed that people died, showed the company covered up. He was short it. He initially talked about it, and people ran the stock up his ass. And I said, let me help you. So I joined in the fight with him to expose this thing. Couple weeks later, the FDA pulled it from the market. It wouldn't have happened without Grego's work. It's Gabriel Grego.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm happy to have had a hand in it. So they've pulled the product from the market. The stock initially went down about 40%. And then in this great wave of everything is good, it's back up to where it was before it pulled the product. So the sell side, in their infinite wisdom, said they would never pull the product. It's a great product. Then after they pulled the product, they said it's bullish because all the bad news is out, which is completely insane, which is why you don't short stocks in this market. But I'm still short it. And I'm not saying it's a great short. I'm not saying it's a bad short. But usually when you come with a product that kills people and you cover it up and you pay doctors money to falsify tests and to promote this thing, there tends to be more bad out there. And I think in a recent interview or podcast, I was talking with Grego that we have an inordinate amount of information yet on Penumbra, but we haven't come with it because when you come with something bad in these days, a bunch of guys gang up and try to push the stock up. So the information's not going bad. It's not going away. We're just sitting with it. And we're going to wait for this so-called storm to blow over. And that'll be that. So I think people will be hearing more about Penumbra in the, I'm not going to say the days. It's not going to be days, and probably it's not going to be weeks, but they'll be hearing about it. We're far from done with Penumbra, and those guys can worry about what we know, and we know an awful lot. And it just goes to the fact that you can expose bad and and Grego did a wonderful job. I mean, he saved many lives getting this piece of shit product pulled from the market. And, there still could be criminal action thrown at the company. There still could be FDA things. There'll clearly be lawsuits. And, I think it's going to be a very interesting name in the months and quarters ahead. But it just shows you how dangerous, speculative, and dynamic this time is. So it's still a name. I still spend time on it. I'm still short it. I don't recommend anyone do anything without doing your own work. But if you Google quintessential capital or Gabriel Grego, I think you'll get all the Penumbra story. And of course, if you're watching this, you got to follow me on Twitter at Alderlane Eggs, which is more entertainment than most of you can stand. So that should be does that answer the Penumbra at all?
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So in an interview with Grant Williams about, I think it was in 2019 or it was in 2018, you pointed out that, you would do a fantastic job as the head of the SEC. And I completely agree with that. And so I wanted to ask you, if you were the head of the SEC, or, you could bring about some reforms in the markets. So what kind of reforms would help sort of bring the authorities' attention to, say, blatant frauds more efficiently? Should there be sort of a new industry made up of private companies about vetting these claims of fraud? For example, the auditors, they're not doing too good of a job. And the burden for the SEC seems to be rather large. So what would you do?
Yeah, it's kind of a bummer they didn't make me the head of the SEC. I mean, the chance was slim and none, and Slim left town. But the first thing I would do is I would enforce the security laws in place, which they're not doing. So the second Elon Musk did his 420 stunt and said he has no respect for the SEC, I can understand how he has no respect for the SEC. A lot of people don't do it, and respect isn't given. Respect is earned. So if I was the head of the SEC, what I would do is I'd find the 10 most egregious offenders, whether it's hedge fund guys, companies, broker dealers, individuals perpetrating scams, and I would bust their skulls so fucking hard they wouldn't know what hit them. And that way, and I would refer them all to the Justice Department for criminal prosecution. And that way you set up a deterrent that if you trade on inside information, if you falsify things, if you engage in security fraud, you get your ass punished, and punished so hard you never, ever, ever, ever want to think of doing it. And there used to be a time where people were fearful of the SEC. There used to be a time where you would announce an SEC investigation and it would actually matter. Now it's like a traffic stop. Now it's just like no one even cares. I mean, the OSC is actually worse. That's the biggest clown operation going. I mean, they do nothing, and they could be half in on it. And BaFin in Germany, the same thing. I mean, the BaFin guys owned Wirecard stock while Wirecard was being investigated.
Wow.
So the security regulators are literally the clowns in the clown show, and they've lost all respect. They've lost all forms of fear factor. They've lost all forms of it. You work at the SEC for a couple of years, and then you go work at a law firm defending the crooks from the SEC. And it's just a bad science project gone very, very bad. So they've lost all teeth. They've lost all enforcement appeal. They've let crime pay. So, Pete Petit, the MiMedx guy, he's 81. He's going to go to jail for a year. Hopefully he dies in the can. Hopefully he dies there. That would be a perfect place for him to end his life. But in a normal time, he would get 15 years. I mean, it's a miracle he got prosecuted and found guilty in this crime pays environment. The fact that he's the only white collar guy going to jail in the last blank, and I had some form of hand in it, is, I'm very proud of. But most people don't care, because crime and white collar crime pays, because the money is so damn big.
Right.
I mean, the money, if you commit security fraud or make things up or get a high dollar stock, the money is in the billions, if not many billions. Mm-hmm. So if I were to tell you or the average listener that, hey, let's do some stock scheme, let's cook the numbers where we could make $1 billion. And then that person says to me, well, what's my downside? Well, the downside is we get caught. Okay, what happens if we get caught? Well, we'd probably pay $100 million fine and we'd get banned from the security business for 2 years. Well, that's not bad. That's like a 10% tax. Well, okay, well, that you asked me what the downside is. That's the downside. And again, do people from Canada watch this at all?
Yeah, many people do actually.
Okay. You know, I'm really proud of what I did at HomeCap. I really am. I'm proud that I brought those clowns to justice. I'm proud that I exposed mortgage fraud. I'm proud that they didn't rip people off more than they did. How bad was HomeCap that the OSC fined him $35 million and gave 3 guys an officer and director ban? How bad must it have been for those do-nothing clowns to actually really hit HomeCap hard? And then the audacity of these motherfuckers going on BNN and saying it was overdone at HomeCap. If it was overdone at HomeCap, they would have never agreed to the fine. They would have never agreed to the officer and director ban, you dumb fucks, right? I mean, the crime, again, you have to hit guys very hard who break the rules and laws, commit security fraud to create some form of deterrent, because otherwise it's going to go on and on and on and on. And once it gets out of hand, it gets very, very, very hard to wheel it all back in.
Right.
You know, which is sad to me, because at the end of the day, the people who get smoked are Joe Sixpack, which gets back to the circle that Joe Sixpack needs to be able to explain this to a high schooler in a paragraph or less, so they don't get smoked.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm on the side of the good guy. I'm on the side of the smaller person, the non-professional investor. But it's a circle, and you have to make sure you're on the top part of the wheel, that the wheel's not running you over. So again, if I was running the SEC, I'd try to make the markets fair and free for all, rather than just a select few, and keep people from ripping others off on their hard-earned money, because that's a bad deal. That's a bad deal.
Got it. You know, one of the things that's most impressive when, you know, someone studies a Marc Cohodes is, you know, your work ethic. So, you know, what drives you, and how does somebody build, you know, such an awesome work ethic?
Well, I'm up early because I'm a jittery guy. I have dogs, which you heard. Those guys, I live in the country. They wake up early because they hear something. I let them out. I can't go back to sleep. I was never good at school. In the United States, when I went to college, the SAT was out of 1,600. I got 1,000. My grades were never good. I probably have that ADD or HDD or whatever they call it. But I have a tremendous memory. And I'm really good at this because I remember things, and a lot of it's pattern recognition. And once I get amused with something, or something gets in my sights, I can't let it go. And it's sort of all I think about. Well, it's not all I think about, but I can't let it go, and I have to finish it up. So if I'm up early, I work. It's quiet because my phone doesn't ring and I don't have to do anything. I have a son he was born in 87, so that makes him 34. He was born with cerebral palsy, and he went to regular high school. He doesn't walk, but he talks fine. He's smart as can be. He's great. But he's never complained a day in his life, and he works his ass off just to keep it all going. And as hard as he works, I feel like I have to work harder, because if he can work hard like that and not complain, I can work harder than that. So that I've always been a hard worker, but ever since he came into my life, I've worked that much harder. And, you know, that's what it takes. It takes preparation. I think if you check out the stuff on Tiger Woods, I think Tiger Woods has natural ability. I mean, I have natural ability in this. I mean, I'm completely deranged. I'm highly skilled, but nothing comes easy, and nothing's a fluke. It's all what you put into your craft. No matter what you do, it's all what you put into your craft. And if you put in the time and you put in the energy and you stay focused and not get drawn into drama with trolls and other things, you can succeed. And that's what I do. I have a process that I try to block out unwanted noise, and you try to get a sense of what makes sense and what doesn't. And I get a lot of information thrown at me through Twitter and through friends and through sources and things like that. And you know what to pay attention to, and you know what to weed out. And it just becomes a time thing. And I don't manage others' money because I don't want to. Not that I can't. People want me to do it all the time, but I just won't. And it's focus, it's time, it's hard work, but I enjoy it. I enjoy it. Ball players enjoy playing ball. The fact that they get paid a lot of money for it is a plus, but those guys like playing ball. They love playing ball. They like playing hockey. If you're a hockey player, you like playing hockey. And this is a business or this is an occupation where you at age 17 can be as successful as me at age 60. There's no age limit to a good idea. You can come up with a good idea when you're 15. I can come up with a good idea when I'm 50 or 90 even. So age has no limiter in this business. So a lot of times you lose your mind as you get older. And I'm not as quick as I used to be, but I'm sharper because I've seen more, and I'm savvier because I trust less. And in this internet age of podcasts and being able to listen to things on your headphones or the internet, it's a great thing. Because when I was your age, there was no internet. There were no Edgars. There were no Cedars. You literally have to go to the public library. Fuck, when I was your age, there was no fax machine. There was nothing. There was there was no cell phones. It was payphone. So it's adaption, it's work, it's drive, it's ego. I'm Marc Cohodes. Every time I make a trade, I expect to win. I never expect to lose. I know losing's part of it, but losing is not okay. It's not okay. I hate to lose. I hate to lose on anything. And losing is not acceptable. And I know I'm going to lose, and I know I'm going to get stuff wrong. And there's no one harder on me than me. And I don't need to hear from the trolls how stupid I am, because believe me, I know how stupid I am when I make a mistake, and I know how much it costs me. And it makes me sick, and it just makes me work harder on the next one. And I think that's the thing. You have to fight to stay way above mediocre. It's not okay to lose. It's never okay to lose. It's part of it, but I never get into a trade thinking I'm going to lose, wanting to lose, expecting to lose. And it's never about beating the market. I don't give a fuck about beating the market. I'm in it to make money on my trades. I'm not in it to the market's going up, I want to make a hedge, or it's like dark in here. You always play to win. And again, that requires work and it requires time.
Right. And to wrap up the podcast, I wanted to ask you, in a recent podcast, which I again believe is Edwin Dorsey's, you said that, dedicated short selling as a whole is dead as a strategy, and most funds are winding down. And I believe you pointed to the example of Carson Block. So now what if you were 35?
I didn't mention that rascal. He's of the smash and grab ilk. He talks about something, goes down, covers it, goes through the roof, this, that, or the other. He's around, and he's not a bad guy, and I actually like him. But I think the activist shorts, by and large, are finished, because those guys tend to get fed information from hedge funds, just reprint their reports, stocks go down for a few minutes, and they cover, and then they go through the roof.
Right.
But it is so hard, and it is so dangerous, and it is so impossible to manage risk. Why do it?
Right.
I think some stuff will come out in the not too distant future from my FBI FOIAs, where I sued the FBI on this MiMedx visit. And there's some other stuff floating around, that there's too much money involved on the other side to make dedicated shorting really a business. Because in the old days, if you would short a GameStop at 30, you'd say, what's my risk? Well, it could go to 40. They could do a little better. Someone could get excited and they could take it up 30%. Nowhere in anyone's playbook is 20 to 450 in 8 days. It just doesn't exist. You can't hedge it. Someone says buy calls. Well, do you know how expensive the calls are? Do you know how stupid that sounds? You just can't do it. In single stock risk, whether it's guys getting crazy with the pot stock or ARBs getting blown away or people losing their margins, I just think it's dead. People have wanted it dead for a long time. People don't want skeptics floating around. And I think by and large, they've gotten their wish. The guys who are really good at this are older, so they're by design done. You know, Chanos is not a spring chicken. Jim Carruthers isn't a spring chicken. I'm not in the business. I think those guys, for all practical purposes, are done. And I think these activists just basically reprint other people's stuff. I think their work is very poor and their quality of work is very poor. So those guys are a dime a dozen. They're done. And, you know, there's the Gregos around who does really good work, but he does 1 or 2 things a year. And again, it's very dangerous.
If you were 35 years younger, so if you were to say 35 years younger today.
Oh, I saw someone. I saw someone send you that question. That's a really good question. Can you ask that question? Because I was thinking about that today.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, he said that in another podcast, he said that dedicated short selling is dead as a strategy, and these funds are winding down. So, you know, what if you were 35 years younger and asked to build something new? So, you know, what would you do, and how would it look like in today's world?
So if I was 25 or I was 30 again, in today's world, if I had an idea, are you still there? Or did this thing go dead?
I'm there, but let's hope it doesn't go out again. Hello, can you hear me? Hello, yeah, I think it's back. There we go.
Are we back?
Yeah.
It says my internet connection is unstable. So, you know, if I was 25 or 30 now and I was doing it, I would try, and I was dead set on being short something, I would try to hook up with like a dedicated long guy who I thought would be really good. Now in Canada, the best of the best is Roland Kuiper, but he's as fucked in the head as I am. He's difficult to get along with. He's mean and nasty, but I love him. I would get together with a long guy who would be interested in doing some one-off shorts. And I'd work really hard on 2 or 3 names a year, know them better than the company's management would know them. And I would try to pick my spot and take a shot, because that's the only way I think you have a chance here, because there's too much money around. You can't have a diversified portfolio, because even if you had 8 things going right, the 12 things you had going wrong would kill you. Mm-hmm. You would have to just singularly focus on one thing, wait for it to fall out of the tree, and just absolutely kill it and carve it up. So I would concentrate on a few things a year and try to find someone to work with who would understand the value of what I would bring to the party in my research process if I was 35 years younger, and go with it from there. Because having a short fund, impossible. And losing money is just a debilitating thing, and losing people money is just sickening. It's just not for me. And if you lose, I mean, last year was a disaster for the shorts. This year is just as bad, or at least the way it started. And not good. It's a crazy ass time. But.
All right. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, Marc. For anyone who listened to this podcast, make sure to go follow Marc on Twitter at AlderLaneEggs. That's ALDERLANEEGGS. So thank you so much for being on the show. It's awesome to talk to you.
Thank you for having me. You're wonderful. Your folks did a really good job. And just